Hey guys, Coach Alex here. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we got coming up for our March Extra Credit Challenge. So for February, we threw out a challenge to accumulate a total of 2,000 double unders throughout the month, and I spoke to a lot of people and they said that it was very effective. We had a lot of good feedback. So with that in mind, our March monthly challenge is going to be to accumulate a total of 30 minutes working on your hands per week. So for all 4 weeks, you tally it all up, it's about 2 total hours out of the month working on your hands. And we have a multi-tiered system that we'd like to talk to you guys about, and depending on what your level of expertise or familiarity is with working in an inverted position, we think these tiers will help you guys progress in a variety of different ways, both with your gymnastics and also for your shoulder to overhead movements with a barbell, dumbbell, or virtually any other implement. All right, so let's get right into it, guys. I want to talk about a couple universal principles that we can use when working on our hands in an inverted position. All right, the first of those principles is going to be a discussion about what your hands are doing. When we're walking around, normally our feet are our main connection to the ground, and you'll notice that when you step, if you do it barefoot, you can take a look at your foot, it spreads a little bit. Right? The foot actually creates more of a surface area when it's in contact with the ground than when you raise it up off the floor. With that in mind, we want to carry that over with our hands. So whether you guys are going to be doing pike handstands or kick-ups to the wall or practicing handstand push-ups or even practicing something like handstand walks, we want to make sure that we have a solid, wide base of support. And that basically means that we want to spread our fingers wide and we want to distribute the weight as evenly as possible throughout the hand as we can. All right, that's step number one. Step number two is going to be talking about the elbows. So if we're working on a pike handstand, for instance, which I'll be showing you guys in a little bit, or we're kicking up to the wall, or we're kicking up into a freestanding handstand, we always want the elbows to be fully extended. That's why we call this a handstand and not a headstand. All right, and it's going to be way stronger. You'll be in a position of greater mechanical advantage if that elbow is extended and at end range of motion than if you try to kick up and bend those elbows at all. All right, and then the last one that we want to talk about in the arm anyway is the concept of active shoulder position. All right, so when we're inverted and overhead, we want to activate the shoulders by pressing up into whatever surface it is that we're using to support ourselves with. All right, so when you're inverted against a wall, we want to actually get rid of the daylight between the shoulder or the bicep and the ears. It's the opposite concept when we're hanging on a pull-up bar, where we have our weight hanging down and we want to pull the humerus into the joint. When we go inverted and upside down, we want to press up against that surface and we want to activate those shoulders. Okay? The last principle that we're going to talk about is getting into a nice stacked position. All right, and what that basically means is that no matter what position you're working from, and again, I'm going to demo these in a little bit, no matter what position you guys are progressing through, we want to make sure that whatever joints we're trying to support over our hands, that we have those joints stacked directly over one another. Okay, so if you have your feet propped up on a box and you're performing a pike handstand, we should see that our hips are stacked over our shoulders, which are stacked over our elbows, which are stacked over our wrists. If we go to something like the wall, or even a freestanding handstand or a handstand walk, we want to try and make sure that everything from ankles all the way down to our wrists are stacked directly over one another. And when you think about it, if you're standing right side up and you're standing still or you're walking, you're performing that same core principle when you're right side up. So we just want to replicate that when we're upside down. It's going to help us balance and keep everything organized. And then speaking of keeping everything organized, the last thing about keeping everything stacked has a lot to do with your core. So we talked about keeping the joints stacked. As far as keeping the midline stable and working throughout this, first of all, we need that. Second of all, we want to make sure that we're squeezing the glutes, keeping that butt nice and tight, because it's going to keep our hips in a nice neutral position so that they don't get behind us or in front of us too much. We also want to draw the rib cage down so that we're nice and stable there. Okay, we don't want to have this sort of exaggerated broken position when we're going overhead. And the last thing is that we want to squeeze our feet together. If we're using our feet for something like a kick up to a handstand or a wall facing handstand, we want to make sure that the legs aren't acting as two separate arms, I guess you could call them, or extremities. It'll be much easier to control your body if everything is connected to itself and working as one solid unit. So those are our basic principles. And in a moment here, we're going to talk about the different tracks that you guys can choose from and follow in order to progress.